Welcome back to the third episode of our podcast on the philosophy of Antonio Gramsci, where we dive deep into the ideas that have shaped the way we think about society, power, and culture. In this episode, we continue our exploration of Antonio Gramsci, one of the most influential Marxist thinkers of the 20th century. So far, we've discussed his life and his intellectual ancestors, but today we are zeroing in on one of his most important and provocative concepts: the distinction between organic intellectuals and traditional intellectuals. Who really holds power in shaping the way we see the world? Are intellectuals independent thinkers standing above politics, or are they deeply embedded in the societal and economic forces of their time? Gramsci challenges the conventional idea of intellectuals as neutral observers, arguing instead that they are either reinforcing the status quo or working to transform it. Let's get into it. Chapter 3: Intellectuals. Introduction. Gramsci challenges the elitist notion that philosophy or intellectual pursuits are reserved for a selected few, arguing instead that everyone engages in an intellectual activity, termed spontaneous philosophy. He posits that the distinction between intellectuals and non-intellectuals hinges on the social function of professional intellectuals rather than any inherent ability. According to him, quote-unquote, all men are intellectuals. One could therefore say, but not all men have in society the function of intellectuals. This stance dismantles the traditional view of labor division, which places the ruling class and intellectuals as purveyors of thought, while the working class merely provides physical labor. Gramsci asserts that individuals' intellectual engagement is integral to their humanity. Gramsci rejects the idea that philosophers or intellectuals, traditionally defined, are superior thinkers, arguing instead that intellectual activity must be understood within its social context. His focus shifts from individual characteristics to the social relations underpinning knowledge production. His definition of intellectuals encompasses a broad spectrum, including both traditional intellectuals who uphold existing social structures, albeit in a seemingly disconnected way, and organic intellectuals who emerge from their respective class and represent it. He emphasizes that intellectuals are not defined by innate brilliance, but by their societal role in producing and disseminating knowledge. Implicit in Gramsci's theory is the notion that all intellectuals serve a societal function, either reinforcing or challenging prevailing norms. He distinguishes between traditional intellectuals, who mask their ties to the dominant class, and organic intellectuals who openly align with societal power structures. Gramsci's experiences led him to acknowledge the understanding and agency of oppressed groups, challenging assumptions of intellectual superiority. Gramsci underscores that philosophy is not exclusive but inherent to all individuals, embedded within language, common sense, and cultural beliefs. He observes the increasing specialization of intellectual labor, which marginalizes those outside recognized circles. For Gramsci, intellectual activity is defined by its social context rather than intrinsic qualities. Thus, he urges a focus on the societal framework shaping intellectual pursuits. Incarcerated, Gramsci expanded on his ideas, advocating for the creation of organic intellectuals aligned with emerging social forces, that is, the working class. He recognized the pivotal role of intellectuals in achieving cultural hegemony, emphasizing their function within societal structures. Gramsci's framework rejects defining intellectuals solely based on their activity, highlighting instead their societal role and influence. Traditional intellectuals, initially organically tied to a specific social class, have evolved into what Gramsci describes as one of the characteristics of the intellectuals as a crystallized social group, one that is which sees itself as continuing uninterruptedly through history and thus independent of the struggle of groups, rather than as an expression of a dialectical process through which every dominant social group elaborates its own category of intellectuals, is precisely that one of connecting itself in the ideological sphere with the preceding intellectual category by means of a common conceptual nomenclature. Every new social organism, type of society, creates a new superstructure whose specialized representatives and standard bearers, the intellectuals, can only be conceived as themselves being new intellectuals who have come out of the new situation and are not a continuation of the preceding intellectual milieu. If the quote-unquote new intellectuals put themselves forward as the direct continuation of the previous intelligentsia, they are not a new at all, that is, not tied to the new social group which organically represents the new historical situation, but are a conservative and fossilized leftover of the social group which has been historically superseded. This is another way of saying that the new historical situation has not reached the level of development necessary for it to have the capacity to create new superstructures, but continues to live in the worm-eaten integument of old society. End of quote. This self-perpetuating cycle is sustained through a sophisticated institutional framework comprising formal entities like schools, colleges, and professional associations, alongside the plethora of informal networks. Despite their inclination towards portraying themselves as detached from societal struggles, traditional intellectuals remain deeply entrenched in the power dynamics of their respective societies. Their narratives, integral to their intellectual output, invariably stem from distinct class experiences. Intellectuals excel in crafting coherent narratives that reflect the world throughout the specific social lenses, capturing the essence of life within that particular stratum. Gramsci posits that intellectuals serve as officers of the ruling class, orchestrating the subordinate functions essential for social hegemony and political governance. Traditional intellectuals function as conduits in an intricate process through which social hegemony is attained, gathering seemingly spontaneous consent from the masses towards the prevailing social direction, a consent engineered, as Gramsci underscores, through intellectual activity. Distinguishing professional philosophers or traditional intellectuals lies not solely in their intellectual pursuits, but rather in their societal role and impact of their endeavors. Implicitly, everyone holds a philosophy, evident in their beliefs, opinions, and practical sensibilities. The essence of being an intellectual or philosopher does not hinge on innate intelligence or profundity, but rather on the societal position and the dissemination of ideas and their impact resonating throughout society. Gramsci emphasizes the laborer's training integral to effective intellectualism, highlighting that ideas are not isolated but rather rooted in one societal placement. As Gramsci articulates, quote, philosophy in general does not in fact exist. Various philosophies or conceptions of the world exist, and one always makes a choice between them. End of quote. This choice, conscious or not, is inextricably intertwined with one's societal position, particularly class. Organic intellectuals. The essence of an organic intellectuals lies in their deep-rooted connection to a particular social group. This connection transcends mere class origins or geographical location. It delves into the intricate interplay between the ideas they advocate and their societal position. Essentially, an organic intellectual's role revolves around legitimizing the existing societal structure and their own place within it. An organic intellectuals embodies and articulates the worldview of the proletariat or any group fighting for power. Various societal factions seeking economic, political, or ideological dominance cultivate a cadre of organic intellectuals, molding them to uphold their interests. Institutions like state colleges and universities serve as a breeding grounds for capitals and states' organic intellectuals. They meticulously craft curricula and networks aimed at perpetuating the prevailing system and grooming technical intellectuals for diverse professions and bureaucratic roles, essential for societal functioning. As society evolves, new dominant groups inevitably breed their own organic intellectuals. Gramsci elucidates this in his discourse on the formation of the intellectuals, emphasizing how every emerging social group engenders a stratum of intellectuals attuned to its functions across economic, social, and political realms. However, these nascent organic intellectuals do not emerge fully formed. They evolve from existing intellectual frameworks, adapting to the shifting socio-economic and political landscapes. Gramsci's focus on organic intellectuals seek to bridge the gap between the theoretical discourse and practical application. Contrary to misconceptions, he doesn't envision an elite directing the masses, but rather a collaboration between critically conscious intellectuals and the working class. This collaboration aims to proliferate organic intellectuals from diverse backgrounds and dismantle the entrenched hegemony originating from the ruling classes. In Gramsci's conception, organic intellectuals can possess a critical consciousness, challenging the status quo and fostering collective efforts to reshape society. Their mission is to amplify and fortify emerging societal currents, facilitating formative change. Communist intellectuals. Gramsci's exploration of hegemony underscored the significance of the working class fostering its own organic intellectuals linked with the Communist Party, trade unions, and factory councils. The early forms of an alternative state power. Gramsci didn't view the masses as passive subjects to be shaped by an enlightened vanguard. Gramsci delineated this relationship as a complex dialectical interplay where intellectuals play a pivotal role. Their historical task, through hegemony, is to bridge the divide between themselves and the popular masses, those masses ever present in Gramsci's thoughts. Social group dynamics, in Gramsci's view, surpass simplistic reflection theories, complicating the notion of social change. His comprehensive concept of social change hinges on recognizing the agency and potential of the masses in either maintaining the status quo or altering the societal conditions. He stressed the necessity of organic intellectuals due to subaltern groups' repression resulting from a lack of articulate consciousness of their oppression. Gramsci highlighted the power of intellectuals and ideas in effecting social change by demystifying interpersonal relations, societal roles, and institutional practices. Organic ideology, as Gramsci posited, mobilizes social groups and guides their actions across various spheres manifested through hegemonic apparatuses like schools, churches, and media. These apparatuses, instruments of hegemony, enlist organic intellectuals as organizers tasked with elaborating and disseminating organic ideologies for moral and intellectual reform. Their role, both within class organizations like political parties and hegemonic apparatuses, is crucial for sustaining class hegemony and/or fostering counter-hegemonic forms of class struggle. Gramsci stressed the vital need for intellectuals to identify with the humblest and least aware among the working class. Intellectuals, after aligning with their class in personal sentiment, must espouse a class culture in their work. They are tasked, as Gramsci envisioned, with dismantling the false reality of bourgeois culture and nurturing a revolutionary alternative. However, in the pursuit of political power, Gramsci emphasized the establishment of lab formation among existing, organic and traditional intellectuals to weaken ruling hegemony and initiate the training of proletarian intellectuals, historically lacking general educational background. Gramsci recognized that revolutionary cultural work posed communicational challenges for intellectuals originating from an old order, risking disconnect with the masses. Gramsci defended the use of sophisticated language to enrich debate, aiming to elevate discourse beyond simplistic levels. He advocated for raising intellectual standards, contrasting Marxist aims with the Catholic intellectual tradition tied to societal norms. Gramsci emphasized intellectuals' close identification with the laboring masses to address the gravity of the problem. Gramsci's stance on intellectuals' relationship with the party contrasts to his libertarian Marxist portrayal, adhered to the Stalinist notion of one party, one class. He advocated for intellectuals' subordination to the political tasks of the revolutionary classes and adherence to the party policy, forming a left-wing tendency oriented towards the revolutionary proletariat. Gramsci underscored intellectuals' alignment with the political objectives of the revolutionary classes, emphasizing certain tasks assigned by the party. Conclusion. Ultimately, as previously posited, Gramsci's perspective underscores that intellectuals emerge from specific class experiences, giving rise to diverse forms of expertise. The extent to which these intellectuals are considered organic hinges on the depth and authenticity of their connection to lived realities reflected in their narratives. Unlike some Marxist theorists, Gramsci avoids the notion of intellectuals possessing innate insight into class truths, emphasizing instead that organic intellectuals are shaped by the class experience itself, albeit through intricate processes. In this way, Gramsci challenges traditional notions of intellectual superiority. Instead, he highlights the importance of lived experience in shaping one's understanding of society. By emphasizing the role of organic intellectuals, Gramsci suggests that true expertise is not derived from academic credentials or innate ability, but rather from a deep connection to the struggles and realities of a particular class. This perspective encourages a more diverse and inclusive understanding of knowledge production, acknowledging the valuable contributions of those whose expertise may be overlooked in traditional academic circles. By valuing lived experience over traditional markers of intelligence, Gramsci's approach challenges the elitism often present in academic discourse. This inclusive perspective allows for a more holistic and representative understanding of society and its complexities. And that wraps up our deep dive into Antonio Gramsci's concept of organic and traditional intellectuals. We've explored how intellectuals aren't just passive thinkers, but active participants in shaping society, either maintaining the status quo or challenging it. So, who are the organic intellectuals of today? Are they grassroots organizers, independent journalists, digital creators? That's the question worth thinking about as we navigate the ever-changing landscape of power and ideas. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with anyone who might find these ideas thought-provoking. You can also reach out to me in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts and keep the conversation going. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode where we will continue our journey through the philosophy of Antonio Gramsci and his most known concept of hegemony. Until then, keep questioning, keep thinking, and stay engaged.